Hi guys, this is Abby from Witchcraft and Criminal History. How are you doing today? Hopefully you're doing well. Well, today we're doing a video on the case that was first done with fingerprints in regards to a murder case. This was the first murder case. There were cases that were done in the British judicial system with fingerprints. However, they were misdemeanors. So this would have been like robbery, assault, vandalism, that type of stuff. But not for murder. Not until 1905. So this would have been about 12 years after Jack the Ripper. And if you watch my other video on Jack the Ripper in regards to DNA, I did mention about this particular case. This case is not really well known, but it's a fascinating case nevertheless. And this case is the Stratton Brothers. Alright, Alfred Edward Stratton was born in 1882, and his younger brother, Albert Ernest Stratton, was born in 1884. And, in particular area of Deptford, they were troublemakers. They were doing, causing trouble. They were doing, robberies, getting into fights and all that. That's what these brothers were doing. They were troublemakers. And in Deptford, at this particular time, there was a shop. This shop was called Chapman's Oil and Colour Shop. So this particular shop, they had a couple of branches apparently, and they sold paints and oils to painters, so to tradies. And they were quite often, would be more than happy to catch the early crowd, people going to work, getting, a couple of tins of paint to go on their work sites, early in the morning. Because the people who ran this particular store, which we're talking about, the Farrows, Thomas and Anne Farrow, they, lived upstairs. So they lived pretty much on premises. So they got the morning crowds. Thomas Farrow was 71 years of age, and Anne, his wife, was 65. And, they ran this shop, they worked this shop, they didn't own it, but they ran it. And on Monday, 27th of March, 1905, William Jones, one of the people who worked for the Farrows, came there, and he was surprised that the door was locked. Because of the particular time, this was 8:30 in the morning. They should have been open at this particular time. They should have been open. However, they weren't. So he tried to get in, but he couldn't find a way in. And he opened up the letterbox. Because in the UK, the letterbox is in the door. So it would be in the door, and you could push them out in. But when he peeped through the letterbox, he saw Thomas Farrow in a pool of blood on the other side of the door. So William, ran to get the police. When the police arrived, they found Thomas Farrow dead. He had massive trauma to the skull. Massive trauma. And they did not know where his wife was. They had no idea where his wife was. And so they looked all over the place, and they found her upstairs. She too had sustained very similar injuries, that she was assaulted and severely beaten. They thought that she was also dead. However, they soon realised that she was still alive. Anne Farrow survived the initial attack with massive head trauma. But back in 1905, there was no such thing as ambulances. So they couldn't exactly dial over in the UK 999 for an ambulance. You couldn't do that. So they had arranged transport to take her to hospital. And regretfully, not long after, she did pass away from her wounds. So it became 2 murders. When the police examined the shop, they found an empty cash box, and also they found 2 masks made from a woman's stockings, also left abandoned there, which, is really good evidence. When they looked at the cash box, they saw a bloody fingerprint on the cash box. So, and at this particular time, everybody knew the Farrows. They were well known in the area, and people really, really wanted this case solved. However, trying to find who did it, especially in this particular time when forensics was in its infancy, and fingerprints were also in their infancy, there was not really much to go on. There wasn't really, much to go on. The only thing what they know is that in the cash box had the weekly's earnings for the shop was completely empty. So they know it was a robbery, and they hypothesized that Mr. Farrow, Thomas Farrow, disturbed them, and they beat him to death. Because what was apparently missing was £13. You might think today, £13, which is about equivalent of $26 my currency, and I think it'd be about the same in the US. In US currency, you might think, that's not much money. They took pittance from these people. We're talking about 1905. £13 was a lot of money. It would have been worth over $1,000. So it'd be a few $1,000s our currency, or a few £1,000, in today's money. And so there was a lot of money being taken. So to try and find, these things, they had to try and, gather evidence as much as possible. And, they had the fingerprint, and they actually got this, fingerprint, examined. They got this fingerprint examined. But when they went through the files of, fingerprints which Scotland Yard had, which was a few thousand at the time, there was no matches done. So this person wasn't caught. Well, if they were caught, they never had the fingerprints done. So that, who did it? They don't file who did it. So they went to talk to other people who had a chat with them in regards to, witnesses. A milkman and his son, his 14-year-old son, I think about 14, were delivering milk, and they saw two white males running away from Chapman Oil and Colour Shop. and it wasn't just these two who saw them. There was also a couple other ladies who, at this particular time, saw them running away. But they weren't quite sure, who they were. They weren't sure, on who they were. But one of the witnesses, who saw it, recognized the younger brother, Albert, and said, I didn't know that one, but that one was Albert. I think, it was Albert. It was either Albert or Alfred. But she recognised one of the brothers anyway. She recognised one of the brothers, and the police came a knocking. They went on, identification parade to see whether the witnesses of this particular incident, of this crime, could recognise them. The 14-year-old boy, was helping his father, who was a milkman. Didn't recognise him, neither did the milkman, and neither did these other ladies. But to make, things sure, whether it was Albert and Alfred, they decided to take their fingerprints. The only complaint that the Stratton Brothers had in regards to getting the fingerprints done was that it was ticklish. They said that it tickled when they got the fingerprints done. And when they thoroughly examined the fingerprint, it matched. I believe it was Albert. So, it matched him. And as soon as they found that one out, both Alfred and Albert Stratton were arrested for robbery and 2 counts of murder. Yeah, so it was, it was Alfred. It was Alfred who she recognised, not Albert, sorry. Just corrected myself. It was Alfred. But they had to, regardless, because at this particular time, this was a new science. Every time, in history, when there's a new science being produced for a murder case or a major case, pretty much you had to, tick off all your T's and dot all your I's. You had to make sure everything was done right. And this was no different in 1905. This was no different. And, so they went to talk to one of their, girlfriends. And, they went to, one of these girlfriends and went to one of the Stratton's landlord. He apparently, I think it was Albert again, was a wife. Not really a wife. It was his common law wife. They weren't married, but, they were together. And you could say he was a woman beater. He apparently beat her and left her with 2 black eyes. And he was actually told to leave, and he left. And then a few hours later, he came back with Alfred, and they both left. The very next day, Albert came back, and he was nicely dressed. It was early in the morning. It was nicely dressed, in a nice suit, which was highly unusual, because apparently he never was up that early in the morning. Never. And his girlfriend was busy doing laundry, which was also unusual for her. Whether she was washing the clothes to get rid of blood, get rid of bloodstains, it is up to debate. They didn't really find much of interest in Albert's place. However, I think when they went looked in Alfred's place, the other brother, Alfred Stratton, they found a couple of koshers. You might be thinking, what's a kosher? Heck, it took me a little while to figure out what a kosher is. A kosher would have been a piece of rope with a lead metal ball, which is made out of lead, at the end of it. And what you would use for it is pretty much to, bludgeon someone. And these were actually the murder weapons of the pharaohs. These were the murder weapons. And once they had this, they had testimony, in regards to Albert, and they got arrested. They got arrested, and, the courts are actually feeling, really, really good in regards to it. And Annie Crotman, or Cromati, this is Albert's girlfriend. Annie is, to correct myself, it's Kate Wade, who was Albert's girlfriend, and Annie is Alfred's. And Annie testified in court, when they went to court, that Alfred came home with a good amount of money. And they apparently went on a bit of a shopping spree right afterwards with a good amount of money. She threw out all of her old clothes and got a bunch of new clothes. And that's what she testified in court. And someone telling me, I don't think she even asked where the money comes from, especially if Kate was getting bashed by Albert, or they're up to no good, and I want to be on the wrong side of the Stratton Brothers. So that might be the reason why she never actually said anything, and that was on the morning of the 27th of March. And this was the same day as the murders. And, they went in there. And after they got, cross-examined and all that, they were found guilty, and it was a big success. But during the proceedings to demonstrate the purpose of fingerprint identification, the expert for the prosecution actually did an experiment with one of the jurors in regards to fingerprints. That they would take, the fingerprints, of a juror and show them the matches, because no fingerprints are the same. And he would also do other things. He would squeeze the finger, push the finger, slide the finger to, alter the fingerprints, to demonstrate that, how fingerprints are done and how they can look. And, both, and it took it, and when the case was given to the jury to decide whether the Stratton Brothers were guilty or not guilty, it took them 2 hours to deliberate. And when they came back, they found them guilty. And back in those days, the conviction for that is hanging. So they were both sentenced to hang for the murder of Thomas and Anne Farrow. And at 9 a.m. on the 23rd of May 1905, at Her Majesty's Prison at Wadsworth, Alfred Stratton and Albert Stratton were executed by hanging for murder, for the murders of the Farrows. So this is the first case which fingerprint identification was conducted, for murder. And this was, the first case, and this made, cases to come based on fingerprints. And nowadays, fingerprints, are widely used. All over the world, fingerprints are widely used. If you kill someone and you've got a fingerprint on a, latent fingerprints, because latent fingerprints to do with the oils on your, naturally secreted on your skin. That's called latent fingerprints. And we all produce them. We all do. Like me, picking up my cup. This cup would have heaps of my fingerprints. All of them. And if my cup ended up at a crime scene, the police could take this cup, and if my fingerprints were on file, I do have some fingerprints on file. I have never been in jail. I've never been prosecuted. I've never been in trouble with the law. But when I was a young child, I had an initiative, to prevent missing children, that young children will get their fingerprints, taken and documented by the police, and a little bit of a photo ID. And this was done with me when I was 5 years old. In case some sicko thought I was an ex-girlfriend when I was very, really little. But whether they can find that, information now, they probably could. They probably could, you get back and go, oh, this person was a child back then, but, she's an adult, so make it a bit bigger. Because you get these for life. My fingerprints now are no different to when I was 5. They don't change. We're born this way. And people, a lot of criminals try and destroy the fingerprints. However, the human body is very, very good at healing itself. And as such, if you, burn your fingerprints off, with acid, or you cut them off, it will heal, and the fingerprints come back on. Like they weren't even destroyed in the first place. And not only that, if it was a, real bad injury, to the skin that can't repair, you got pretty much a brand new identification. Like if you got a major scar down your finger, you're the only one with that particular scar on your finger. So, it is a very, very crucial bit of evidence, which is done, nowadays, which we use all the time. Every single case, in modern times, there's fingerprint identifications. More often than not, there will be fingerprints, and criminals are actually very aware of it. That's the reason why they damage the fingerprints. That's the reason why they, wear gloves when they go and rob a place. They're aware of it. So, this is about the Stratton Brothers, the first documented case for a successful conviction for murder in the UK. So, if you enjoyed this video about the Stratton Brothers, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and blessed be.